Thank you, Mother, Father, Creator, Creatress. I offer these words in gratitude for feeding us and growing us like tall trees, for loving us and caring for all the ignorant children who may have been deaf to our body's plea and numb to our pain. Dearest Father, Creator, Creatress, may we all be delivered, encouraged, and inspired to make a massive world womb change. If there is no change in the global attitude toward women's wombs, it will be impossible to find peace on earth. If there is no change, war and slavery and the injustices done to humans will always rule. So I cry to you with praise and honor, respect and gratitude, grace and love to those wombs that have made their transition into the next world and to those wombs that survived. So that is a quote from Queen Afua's book, Sacred Woman, A Guide to Healing the Feminine Body, Mind, and Spirit. I recommend it to every woman. I recommend it to every Mwana Ubuntu man. I think it's important that you know your woman for the men. And I think it's important for the women to know themselves. So the name is Nduku. I am the host on Kumbukeni. Karibuni, asanteni kwa kuwa nasi. Welcome and thank you for being with us. Today, the topic is the African woman restored, reclaiming our role in healing and liberation. A few weeks ago, I covered a book, John Perkins' book, The Secret History of the American Empire, I believe it is called. And in there, we saw a couple of indigenous nations that were mentioning the importance of the woman in maintaining balance in nature, and how they observed in the United States that the women had been detached from their role and the women were being now excessive, taking on the masculine role. And because of that and many other reasons, because our community, when Ubuntu needs to heal, we decided to have this conversation so that we can learn and take the lessons from today and start implementing them. So I am joined with by my community today. I will let them introduce themselves. We're going to start with Mama Kanyisile. Go ahead, Mama Kanyisile, and introduce yourself.
I believe my name is written on the screen. I have one name, Kanyisile. I have two surnames, Litchfield Shabalal. I am not married to a Litchfield. That is my maiden surname.
Yes. Mama Kanyisile is a great source of knowledge. She has listened to those who came before her. She has searched for knowledge from those who came before her, and she's sharing it with us. So we appreciate her. Oladele.
Greetings, everybody. My name is Oladile Dosmas. You can see my name on the screen. The myself and Nduku, we host the Kevin Awakening series every 2 weeks. And what we do, and what I love to do, and what we're trying to do, is to actually decolonize our minds and awaken our consciousness. Africans, wake up. Thank you.
No worry.
And to add on to nomenclature and surnames and anthroponymy in these names, my name is Professor Noire Burge. The Burge is out of Norman, England. And as we're talking about decolonizing our minds, those signatures that you see in the background, I created a film called DNA, using genealogy to change my slave last name. So Burge represents my family. I love them, but it doesn't represent my African cultural core. But yes, my name is Professor Noire Burge, teach at a couple of institutions, and I'm a filmmaker. So peace and blessings to the world and our people of African descent.
Asante. So our sister, who you've all seen coming in and out, is going to join us. Cindy will be joining us in a few. You've all seen her on Kumbukeni before. We spoke about African spirituality. So when she comes in, we will allow her or give her space to introduce herself. Like I said, the conversation was hatched from the need for healing in our family as Wana Ubuntu, and my frustrations in the lineal or the one street, the one way ways that Western culture has conditioned us to deal with the issues we're facing. So every now and then we are talking about the African man has been neglected. Let's focus on the African man. And we focus on that and we neglect the woman, the child, right? And then we talk about the woman and we focus on that and we neglect the others. And then we talk about the boy child, the girl child, but always just dealing with one as if we cannot deal with all of them, right? As if we don't realize that we must always, at all times, deal with the man, the woman, the boy child, and the girl child. And which is why we have men today on a topic like African woman restored. So the goal today is to understand where we are, which is detached from who our role as women, as African women especially, because this is not about feminism where we are taking ourselves, white women, Asian women, Arab women, and talking about us as if we are the same. We are the same, but we are not the same at the same time. So this is a conversation based on our culture, and our focus will be on Wana Ubuntu African women. Mama Kanyisile, please start us off.
Yeah, I think we are influenced by Western philosophy. Marimba Ani has written a lot about this, how we approach life and how Westerners approach life is things that it's like diametrically opposite to one another. And that goes for epistemology. What do you define as knowledge? And how do you gather knowledge? Because I think epistemology, for me, more than saying what is knowledge, it is the lens with which you gather knowledge, which is so crucial. So, Westerners, for instance, if a civil war breaks out in any country, you must listen to what the CIA say, that very first briefing of the CIA in the room. The operative will talk and try and explain complexities. And it is complex. I mean, the civil law is complex. It's people within the same territory fighting. So it's complex, not a simplistic issue. So they will be trying to explain, and the CIA top bosses are just like, wait, 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 wait. Who are the good guys and who are the bad guys? That's how Western philosophy thinks. There's always us and them. It's not synthesis. It does not reconcile. It always breaks into us and them, into black and white, into gray or dark, into light or dark. So this thing of dealing with the woman outside the man, or dealing with the parents outside the children, is just a pitfall into Western philosophy. And basically, that's why we actually are struggling in Western education, because it is asking us to be that simplistic about things, about our approach. And when we are not, we are synthesizers. If you are going to teach me in physics about iron, yes, tell me about iron, the element Fe, but I want to know what that Fe stands for. But more than that, I want to know what's the value of iron to nature, what's the value of iron to human beings. I want to know how iron affects me. So you can teach me physics outside of biology, outside of nutrition, outside of the kitchen, where iron is crucial for me. I want to know which animals, have a deficiency of iron. I want to know which plants have got more iron than the rest. So we are people who synthesize. We don't think in silos. So I think I agree. We need to start dealing with the African family, not with the men, not with the women, with the children. We need to deal with us as a collective. And thank you, Ndugu. I'll leave it there. And I'm going to mute my mic. I'll unmute it when I speak again.
Asante. Cindy, go ahead and introduce yourself before the internet takes you off again.
Okay, I'm Cindy. I'm from South Africa, KwaZulu. Ngumzulu. Ngikhuluma isiZulu. Ngaphansi kwenkosi usenza ngakhona noDingane noNyasi. Yes.
Oh, is that the internet taking her again? Yeah. All right. Okay, let me just do this. Go ahead, Oladile.
Okay, I'm gonna start with women, basically, and it's something I've learnt over the years. Women are what bring what brings equity to our society. We, the Western society, or the Western civilization, has basically demonized matriarchy. They've basically imposed patriarchy on society today. And when we're talking about Mahats, okay, the reason why the world is not balanced at the moment today is because we're not in sync. Civilization was built on balance. All the things that ancestors did in the past till date was built on the balance between the man and the woman. Okay, things started to go wrong when we went away from balance to turn things to patriarchy, and then basically there was an imbalance in society. So a lot of men, a lot of people, even women, can't seem to get their heads around the fact that men and women are meant to live in harmony, in balance with each other. There's no man is the head of the woman. I hear that all the time. I even had this argument with my younger brother a couple of days ago. I'm trying to educate him, but it doesn't seem to get it. Okay? There needs to be a balance between man and woman. When you work together, you know, the extra burden that society seems to impose on man lifts, and the extra burden that society seems to lift on put on a woman lifts. So in harmony, we work together, we make the world a better place. That's my opening shots.
Asante, Asante. So yes, we need to, there goes the theme. We need to all work together, to all care about each and every part of the family, the male, the female, the boy child, the girl. Noari. You're muted, Noari.
So, hey, peace and blessings, everyone. I need the audience to be patient with my opening as well as my colleagues here because maybe a little lengthy, and with all due respect.
So good.
My permission from Dr. Kanisile to go forward. All right, so I will go forward. It's very important in regards to context. And a lot of times, understanding ourselves as genetically, epigenetically, and melanated African people, where our social psychology is mostly westernized and European. I'll start with, and I hope everyone will watch the full video because a lot of times people will jump in to watching the video, not hearing the full context and the framework. A lot of times when we don't talk about, like, for example, the Enlightenment, 16th century to 18th century, and modernity and what individualism is, it frames our thinking and how we relate to each other as humans, right, in a Western context. I'm a professor of social sciences. And in the social sciences, you have anthropology, sociology, psychology, and all of these things. The people that frame the way that we think are all Western Europeans. You open up in Duku saying linear, right? This one. Mm-hmm. And we have to know what that is. That's more of a Western Eurocentric way of thinking. One at a time, one way, instead of a circular thinking and all-encompassing, as you will. So a lot of us who are very pro-African and Black-centered and indigenous sometimes don't know how the concepts of Westernization are indoctrinated into us. These theories that come out of Europe, when we're talking about in sociology, Auguste Comte, we're talking about these guys like Franz Boas and all of these guys that are rooted in university, right, in academia. And the reason I want people to stay with where we're going, because there's a high percentage of divorce in the West, and specifically in America, right, as we relate to each other. High 70% of divorces, and some are saying, is being inspired from women and then they say 90 cents. This is the association, ASA, I believe, America's Sociology Association, and then 90% of educated women, right? So where I'm going is all of these theorists that is framing the Western narrative of how we think and believe, this individualism, makes it difficult for sometimes in the West for men and women to coexist. One of the reasons I'm saying this is because I had a close friend who was part of the Ifa Yoruba community, and as she did a PhD, she claims that she would have been very Eurocentric and feminist had she not been rooted in her African spiritual systems, understanding Yemenya and the Orishas and Ogun and Obatala, and just all of these different concepts. And she often stated that had she continued, as she continued with this PhD program over the time, and she saw how so many people were changing, because the PhDs take a long period of time, she was able to maintain her understanding in Black-centered feminism, so-called, I won't say feminism, but as a Black African-centered woman, being able to block out all of these Eurocentric socialized theories that was changing the mindset of the other woman that she saw. So when she said that, it just changed me being in so-called academia, how I even saw our relationship for men and women in a Western concept, in a Western paradigm. And I hope I'm making sense to everyone. Because again, you have these Max Weber, we're talking about sociology, Max Weber, Emil Durkheim, and these people who are coming out of social Darwinism and eugenics and scientific racism. And this all comes out of the Industrial Revolution and how all this begins to be framed. And so as much as we feel and we know that we're African epigenetically, rhythmically, musically, how we relate to ancestors, all these things, if we haven't studied, I'm referring to myself, we haven't been in a culturally linguistic African country for 10 to 30 years. And I think this is where the anthropology is coming out, right? Where you've been in these regions and you understand relationships and have studied Marimba Ani and Dr. Joy LeGroux and listen to Dr. Kanisile and understanding correlation in relationship man to women. And like myself, being indoctrinated, speaking English, white Eurocentric thinking, it makes that very difficult for that connection. Because if the data is saying, hey, you have 90 in America, 90% of women moving into divorce, what are some of the factors that we're leaving out? I think we're familiar with men's infidelity as the narrative in the world or the West. But it's more than that when you're also having evidence of non-infidelity, divorce and relationships happening. So we know there's, money, resources, intimacy, these other things. But here in the US, personal experience and experience from other brothers and sisters, I think the framework is more a Eurocentric, direct correlation with all of these social scientists that we don't know that frames our thinking, as we don't have what Dr. Clark would say. Now I'll make this statement in mind, right? Dr. John Henrik Clark, whose mentor was Arturo Schomburg. For people in New York, we know the Schomburg Institute for Research in Harlem. He says, in order to know yourself, Dr. Clark wanted to know his history, his Black history, even to Schomburg. Schomburg said, you won't know any of that until you study the information of your so-called colonizers and masters. Once you understand who they are and what they are, you'll understand yourself, and then you can go forward understanding African liberation theology. Apologies for my length.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what elders do, right? They have you sitting and being patient. But this is also part, and this will come up in the conversation, this is part of how we need to engage with each other, and the lack of patience that we have today in our community, which is also affecting our family. Cindy. Please share with us.
I think from a social justice and neuroscience perspective, neuroscience proves that spiritual experiences, now I'm speaking as a young woman, our spiritual experiences are deeply rooted in our brain function. Now, in isiZulu, we say ubuhlakani, and women in South Africa, we have isisho esithi wathinta abafazi wathinta imbokodo, which translate as you strike a woman, you strike a rock. Now it's 2025 and I'm a young woman. So as you know, as a young woman, we as Africans, we say indlela ibuzwa kwabaphambili, meaning that we are guided by those who have moved and lived before us and we follow behind. Now, in 2025, stemming from Isisho SCT, you strike a rock, you strike a woman, you strike a rock, I'd say simanxebanxeba kodwa asihlehli, which translates to we are wounded, but forward we go as women. Now, there are a lot of influences, the role of the woman in the Anthropocene. Now, the Anthropocene is the current geological age, meaning the era in which humans impact Earth. Moving from women as understanding ourselves as just women to looking into traditional roles of women, we know that in order for us to reclaim our dignity and reclaim our power as women, we need to look back into what led us to where we are now. So that would be going into a scientific perspective and also a gender perspective, whereby we look at gender inequalities and a lot of scholars, Cohen 2003, Nkosi 2014, even Tusi 2023, they concur that a lot of gender inequalities are due to social construction, meaning that the ideas which society holds and the customs and the practices in which are influenced by society then mandate or stipulate what gender should be. So I think for me, for now, I'd like to stop there because next I would like to speak on the traditional roles of women. But before I go into that, I think I'll stop there and give it on to the next speaker.
Thank you. Thank you. And this is the beauty of having community, where we're all bringing different perspectives, different experiences, and different ways to view different subjects in our community. So we have miseducation coming from Noire, we have gender from our sister Cindy, and Mama Kanyisile and Oladele spoke about the need for us to speak about the family, the holisticness of healing our family. So let's go step by step. I think let's go step by step. Let's start with the woman, right? Because it is our responsibility first that we are detached from who we are. So we're going to look at the topic: what is the woman's role in what has happened? What do we need to do? What is the man's role in what has happened? What does the man need to do? What is the children's? We'll take both children. What is the children? And maybe we will look at them differently because there are things happening in our community to the boy child that are affecting the relationship with the mother and to the girl child. So for us women, Mama Kanyisile, what is it that we have done? And I like that Cindy says, let's look back to see what happened that got us where we are. What has happened to us through the time that has gotten us where we are, and what do we need to do so that we can return to our role? Because clearly it is important for us to do so for the sake of our liberation and our well-being as one of Ubuntu.
Thank you, Nduku. Going back, it's a podcast on its own. I'm not sure it's something that can be covered in 2 or 3 minutes, and there's many of us, so I don't want to be lengthy in my response. But it's hard to analyze what the women did outside of what the men did. You can't. We are falling into the same Western pitfall. We just need to say what has happened to us as a people. And I think the first thing that happened to us, as I say, was they changed what we define as knowledge. They colonized epistemology and they told us what is knowledge. So indigenous knowledge, African spirituality, our culture, all became sidelined, or they forced us to live split personalities, where when we're at work at Anglo-American or at Price Waterhouse or at Ernst& Young, you are in this Western mode where you speak English and there's ma'am, and you have gender grammar using he, she, hers. And then you come back home and you use an African language and suddenly there's no gender grammar. And what you did not uphold at work, which is burning your incense and talking about an originator who has no gender, because our originator said no gender. But at work, you subscribe to a God who has a gender, who is a he, and Jesus is a he, and the disciples are he. So truly, I think, which is where the term cognitive dissonance comes in. Our minds are constantly at war between a way of life that has been infused on us and tied to working and money and urbanization and so-called civilization. And then you have this other part of your life that is not dying away because it's your DNA, where you know that I have an originator who is genderless, where you know that I don't have gender grammar, where you know that gender, in the true sense of the word in pre-colonial African society, was a social construct. That's why if you look at the originator of Shona people, Christians say God, I say originator. Moari is, I don't know who Moari is, because when they go to Moari and they need mercy, they say, oh, the breasted one. And then they want to go to Moari where they need machoism, they're going to war, and they say, oh, the bearded one, the muscular one. So for us, gender truly was a social construct, but the West tells us that gender is a social construct, but it's not. The West has taken gender and biology and fused them together, where your biology is your gender and your gender is your biology. It was never like that for us. That's why we had women who would lead men to war. That's why in Jingambande's crawl, for instance, you had men who were cross-dressing. You had men, the chibados, they called them. You had men who lived as males, who could marry one another. And yeah, they've introduced such hate, and we have run with the hate. We've run the hate in terms of sexual orientation. We run with the hate in terms of the men being the head and lording it over. We run with the hate in terms of looking down on farmers when women were the tillers of the land. It's another thing they took us away from. The land needs the womb. It really needs the woman's hand. And until we return women to agriculture, our land is not healing. And when the land is not healing, we the people are not healing, because in our spirituality we are in nature and nature is in us. I think I'll leave that for now and just allow the other speakers to come in.
Asante. And yes, if we are the giver of life, it makes sense that we are the ones who are supposed to be infusing that into the land, into the soil, to bring out more life. Oladile, what do you say about our role in being detached, us as women, from who we are?
I'm going to come from a personal perspective in terms of my understanding as I've grown older. And what I've realized and what's working for me and my wife at the moment is the fact that we listen to each other. We are in harmony with each other. And I can tell anybody, if you and your wife or your partner in harmony, things work. And this is something that I've had to unlearn. And when we talk about decolonizing the minds, it's something I had to unlearn, because like I said, I had a conversation with my brother, and they still believe in the patriarchal sense of things, that men has to be this and that has to do that. But as I've decolonized our mind, what myself and my wife do is we just say, listen. And my wife, in terms of my spiritual leaning, I have to listen to my wife, because as a mother, as an incubator, you have that sixth sense intuition that we men don't have. And this is a lot of things. This is something that men need to be wary of, because you're a woman, even though you're physically more powerful, But in terms of intuition and the sixth sense, woman is a lot more powerful than you are. So you as a man need to tap into that to actually get guidance in terms of moving forward. And this is something person that I've learned and I'm learning all the time, because as myself and my wife, we navigate our life to see our lives and doing things that we want to do. I've always said, for us to get to where we need to get to, we need to be in harmony. We need to listen to each other. And I cannot, in as much as I come up with all these ideas and stuff like that, but she doesn't agree with what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. I can't do it if we don't come together in harmony and in balance and actually agree to things. And the good thing about this is basically when I'm thinking something, she senses it.
Mm.
It's kind of weird that when you're in that kind of place, it's so powerful. I'm thinking something, I'm thinking my mind, and she's second guessing what I'm thinking, and she's speaking it live. So, guys, to most men, and this is a struggle for a lot of men, because we've been so brainwashed into this patriarchal thing that men has to load it, men has to be this, has to do that. Our power is working together, and that's basically it. It's not like you're the head, I'm the tail, or the fallacy that Christianity puts in place and say, yeah, men are the head of the house and all that kind of stuff. When I talk to people kind of don't get it when I'm talking. They're thinking maybe I've been brainwashed or something like that, and I'm thinking, well, I got to a stage in my life right now where I don't particularly care what people think anymore, because you have a consciousness awakening to see what other people don't see, and I'm comfortable being the lone person who's speaking differently. I'm very comfortable with that. So to those men out there who think, yeah, you have to load it over your woman, you can never get things right if your wife does not agree with you, and that's the power of a woman. So we need to basically bear that in mind. I'll leave it there.
Harmony. Oh. Thank you for answering it in a way where you're showing the responsibility is you didn't use the linear Western way. You used our
No.
Thank you. Noire.
Okay, so I don't know how when I first opened up, I left out the Abrahamics and the effect on the psychology and the psychosis. That's supposed to be the first thing that I talked about, because that now shapes the framework of for how women think that the man should be the head. So if you go around in multiple societies currently, around the continent, South America, and the Americas, the women will support a non-circular family dynamic. And as women run the households historically, I don't think that's anything that's up for debate of who runs the household. Even in almost a Western family dynamic, and so the idea of the fundamental idea of the man as the head, the father, and with the Abrahamics and the religions, referring to Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, that's fundamental in the thinking in the Western world, and more so in what's called modernity, right, from the 15th century up to now, these current times. And so as that begins to change, when you get into more, even I'm saying modernity, more modern times, when we're saying 18th, 19th century and 20th century, now you have this framework of industrialization and capitalism, work, hierarchies, stratification, social systems from top to bottom. And so as this almost a white male patriarchy mindset is happening, the women is taking on that framework as white male patriarchy in the psychology in the West. So as this begins to happen, you start to see a clash in more, when we're saying, I would say 30 to 50 year period now. And so, for example, they say art imitates life, life imitates art. There's a film called Kramer versus Kramer in the 1980s. Mm-hmm. In the 80s, this begins the kind of the stage, 70s and 80s, of divorces beginning to happen. And more or less in the West, you don't have any accountability to the society and the family, meaning that, hey, I can be whatever I want in my head. And the auntie, the grandmother, the brothers, sisters, nobody can say anything because of the rugged individualism that I'm talking about, coming from these psychotic sociologists and anthropologists in social sciences. And so you take that, you take the Enlightenment, Reformation, Protestant Reformation, these things in Europe that creates a different type of Christianity. It's almost like I said, the heresies and the psychopathic thing that begins to frame as they colonize America, enslavement, all these things. And now you have this almost social dysfunction that we follow that's almost a norm from 15th century on as how men relates to women. If you know, well, first you have to know the framework of indigenous cultures and African cultures and what they were. And the little bit that I began to learn, even out of EFI communities and these different communities, started to, again, what I said earlier, change in my understanding of this white Europeanness that we all have, which would make this kind of conflict, right? This antithetical thing as we're trying to relate to our women and women relating to men. Here in America and in the West, again, you have now, as Nduku mentioned at the beginning, this idea of masculinity, this gender, what Dr. Kanisile was saying, and what's beginning to clash instead of it being understood as a so-called fluidity. It's kind of a tough conversation to have because, like Dr. Kanisile said, you need way more time to go into that. But now you have something currently like what's called in hip hop the versus battle, where people are battling each other, right? I call it the versus battle now with men versus women. It's constantly in social media, constantly in the ethers, constantly in the conversation. And so when this social psychology is all through social media, right? This type of combativeness, sometimes with women on social media in regards to body, in regards to what the 20-somethings are doing and the 30-somethings are doing, and I see the 40, 50, and 60-somethings are doing on social media in regards to this competition, in regards to you have let's say married people who feel like they're not living their best life, and now they have to follow what the 20-somethings and 30-somethings are doing, and kind of framing this new level of divorce and what I was saying earlier. So if you don't have, I think, a holistic understanding of our ancient order in regards to how men relates to women, women relates to men, what Baba Aladale was saying, Dr. Kanisle and Cindy, this context of where this mindset and this thinking actually comes from, and then trying to figure out and learn some of our ancient ways of thinking. And the modern times can be coexist circularly with the ancient times. Man-woman relations, child to family relations. And again, I know I'm talking from a Western American perspective, the disrespect of the mother, the disrespect of the father, the disrespect of the elders, all plays this role in how men, in my opinion, how men and women relate. So I hope I wasn't again, all over the place kind of with that, but I feel that it's an amalgamation of a lot of different topics, and each topic, I think we can just talk about one thing, talk about that for an hour, a different segment, that for an hour, another thing, that for an hour, because I think it's an amalgamation of so many things that's happening, I think, in the Western culture, that's now just creating this very difficult discussion for men to relate to women, and men to relate women to relate to men. And I'm personally guilty of all of those Eurocentric frameworks and making relationship work and having to rethink what it is that I'm saying. What am I doing? What am I, you know what I mean? And creating that isfet or chaos with my Eurocentric mindset while trying to deal with an African woman. So and I think many of us are guilty of that and may not even mention that. But I think we should know where that's actually coming from.
Thank you. So as you're speaking, and I'm glad you brought religion the Abrahamics you mentioned. For those who don't know, that is one and the same thing, because I had written down feminism and religion. I believe, Cindy, I'll let you go in a minute, that feminism and religion have played a huge role in detaching us from our role. In our pursuit to be equal with a man, we have lost understanding that we must still maintain our feminist ways, our feminine, our womness, right? Womb wellness. In our pursuit to be like the man or equal to the man, we have now become the man and taken on his qualities that are not conducive to the well-being of the family, right? In that Kumbukeni broadcast where I said that the woman is there to check the man, and it's not in an overpowering, overbearing way. It is in a harmonious way where you step in. And I several times I've said the relationship between a man and a woman is a dance. At least that's how I understand it now. You step in, you step out when needed. You step in, you step out, you step, and you're dancing the whole time together while holding hands, but stepping in and stepping out when needed and when not needed. So, feminism, Western feminism, we're going to call it, and we have to find another word for it in our community. And I like womanhood because it remains in nature. I like titles that are grounded in nature, where we're not moving too far away from nature. So feminism is a huge anti mona ubuntu um, womanhood. And it's even seen in the feminist movement back in the day. They did not respect the Black woman in that movement. They did not honor the Black woman in that movement. And I don't even know when we lost sight of that fact and we started following along with the white woman in how we should present ourselves. And I don't know why we, of a different culture, of a different way of being, are aligning ourselves with a white woman. That doesn't mean that we hate the white woman. We just need to understand that we're different. Like Kendrick Lamar said, they ain't like us. They ain't like us. And it's as funny as it sounds, it is true. We are of different cultures, we are of different ways, we are of different interactions with nature. It is evident in history, it is evident today. They destroy, we build. So why would I align myself with people who destroy? Hmm? Cindy, Nora, you had some. Hold that thought until we come around back, so that we let Cindy go.
Okay, I think also just realizing our interconnectedness, women and nature. And I'll mainly speak about reclaiming our power as people, or reclaiming our power as women, actually. I think we also just don't do ourselves any favor by focusing on speaking languages which aren't our own, as much as we try and speak these languages so that people can understand us across the board. But in order for us to actually reclaim our power, I think it's very important for us to go back to our origins as Africans, or as the African woman. And for me, as a young African woman, our main origins was having what we call ugogo, as Africans, who assisted, or who played a huge or a key role in telling what we call izinganekwane in isiZulu, or folk tales. And that preserved a lot of our culture as Africans, or as Amazulu. In our language, isiZulu, sithi gijima nogwaja luyezonwab, which translates to run rabbit, the tortoise is approaching. Now we have a rabbit, which is a fast animal, and a tortoise, which is a slow animal. And basically, this folktale was told to emphasize the tortoise is female, the rabbit. I'm not sure about the rabbit's gender. But what elders wanted us to understand was that in situations, in order for you to accomplish or achieve whatever mission you are on, it's important, or it's vital for you to have strategic planning. and also knowing when to speak and knowing when to act. Because as young as we were, those folk tales which were told to us actually instilled a lot of knowledge which we can apply into our everyday lives as adults now. We know that as a young woman or as a woman, it's important for you to know your boundaries, know when to actually speak, and not because you are oppressing yourself. Because the five faces of oppression by Young actually state that marginalization, powerlessness, cultural imperialism, um, I think exploitation is one of them, and violence, they all play a role in oppressing, whether it's you as a female or the male gender. So I think for us, one of the things that we need to remember as women is recognizing our power and stepping into our power as well as women, and realizing that this we aren't in a gender battle, but we actually have a mandate of preserving who we truly are as women, and embracing that as well, that we are women. And I think also, just to add on to that, a lot of women shy away from collaborating. However, if we collaborate with other women, we are able to leave a legacy, because you can't achieve much if you are alone. But through collaboration, especially if you're a woman, you are able to align yourself with other powerful forces, because women are have a lot of spiritual guidance and spiritual abundance. So if you collaborate with other women, you are able to actually have more assistance spiritually, and build you are able to build a stronger force spiritually, which will actually assist you in guiding your way forward as a woman. So I think just acknowledging who we are and embracing who we are as women is one of the key roles which we need to actually implement in our everyday lives.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Cindy. I want to honor this moment. I am truly blessed to have all of you in my life. You've played a huge part in my growth so far, and my understanding of who we are and my African centeredness. So just taking that quick moment to appreciate all of you. I'm going to read this, and hopefully it will guide us into our next segment. It was all same book. We are going to be grounded today by Queen of Wa's book, Sacred Woman. It was all that unloving, uncaring touching of my womb that had made me so defensive and self-protective. Even now that I've finally found a man who is kind and gentle, I find I'm still having trouble when my womb is touched. But I'm laughing. I'm being nice by laughing. This time, though, I told him about my bad experiences, and we talked about it all. Then he said, "Now I understand. For 7 years, I never quite understood what was happening. And then I started holding him and hugging him while he explained to me how he felt, how he had related to my sensitivity and emotions. It felt as if we had started all over again, like everything was brand new between us, like spring. Then suddenly my husband began to rock me and sing to me like a poet, and my womb broke out into a wondrous smile. It was because he decided to interview my womb that we got so clear about the whole touching issue. The role of the man in returning the woman to her natural role. Mama Kanyisile.
Thanks, Ndugu. I don't know how to approach that actually, because for as long as both that man and woman are grounded in religion and not spirituality, it's not going to happen, because religion is the one that It's actually the last chapter in my book where I do a comparison, and the name of the chapter is What African Women Lost Through Colonization. Believe it or not, African women lost more through colonization than men. So, because men were still put in charge. I mean, we have three races. We have the Caucasian race, that's white, the Mongoloid race, that's Asians. We have the Negroid race, that's us. Yes, the Caucasian man is on top, then the woman, then the Mongoloid man, then the woman, then the Negroid man, then the woman. So they still have someone they have power over. We have nobody we have power over. We truly are the carpet. But for me, it is in the wedding, where pre-colonially the woman was a procreator, viewed as sacred. That's why the queen mother governed the spirit world and the king governed the physical world. That's why if you go to the only surviving monarchy, Eswatini, my mom's people, if you go to official government photos, the queen mother is on top and the king is below, because the spirit world is what supersedes the physical. So we moved from being in charge of the spirit world, from being procreators, from being sacred. I like it in the King James version, to being beguilers. That's like deceivers of men. It even says so. Women, we are deceivers of men. We are easily deceived and we are deceivers of men. And then the New Testament comes and calls us the weaker sex and we can't teach men. Women must learn in silence. So that downgrading for me has got one nice English word called bastardization. We've been so bastardized that we have even tend to believe in our own dust as women. The role of the man in upholding us. I'm not sure any man can uphold you, Ndugu, until you come to what the Greek people call a kairos moment, a moment of reawakening. African Americans call it woke. You need to come to a moment of wokeness as a woman, because you cannot help someone who does not know that they have a problem. You also cannot help someone who does not want to be helped. So while, yes, the man has a role, and I love the quotation that you've just read, the woman was, the men helped because the woman realized that they need help. So I think that's why for me, I can't say we have told women enough that they need to snap out of inferiority. We need to keep telling them. We need to keep telling them, because every other negative culture in this motherland of ours is upheld by a ugogo. Cindy didn't say what ugogo is in English, is a grandmother. So it's upheld by the grandmother. FGM in the West and the East. Fortunately, we don't have FGM in the South because Islam never touched us, because FGM really comes from Islam. I don't know why we don't say it out loud. FGM is upheld by grandmothers. They listen to how the daughter is peeing and they say, no, she wasn't cut, she wasn't sewn. The grandmothers, instead of becoming the beacon and the encyclopedia of the culture and the history, as Cindy was saying, as Nari was saying, have become upholders of this negative culture. So for me, yes, the man has a role to play, but it's sort of for me like at step B. The first step is up to the woman awakening to the oppression, to the downgrading, to the bastardization, awakening to the fact that women were never sex objects. I mean, I don't want to dominate this because we are many, but just imagine a village pre-colonially. Everybody knew everybody. So the Sotho now have a saying, Sotho tswana in Pedi, they have a saying, they say, Monna ke slepe. A man is an ex, they just cut wherever. And they use that to excuse a man's adulterous ways or sleeping around. And I'm just like, whenever you talk to me about African culture, I want to know, when is that pre-colonial? Is the colonial or post-colonial? Because the colonial and the post-colonial are so bastardized. I don't even call them African culture. I call them exactly what they are: bastardized African culture. Because in which village was a man going to be an ex? In which village where everybody knew one another? Whose daughters were you going to be sleeping with, Oladele and Noire, in that village? Whose wives are you going to be sleeping with in that village? So we really need to come to the awakening of saying there are three African cultures here. And the purest one is so far from us because it is before 639, before the 639 CE, Common Era, or AD for those who are stuck in religion. Before Arabs came, that's the culture. We go back all the way to BCE. And then you have this culture that crept in with colonization and religion. You have the West one in this so-called post-colonial culture, which is nothing but neoliberal and neo-colonial culture. The three don't talk to each other. The colonial and the post-colonial are very close to one another, and they're so bastardized. If you put binoculars, there's very little African within them. So yes, to come back to your question, Dugu, while the man has a responsibility, it's step B. The first step still lies with the woman. We need to come to a awakening of realizing the dust that we've been made into.
Asante. And this is why I said, let's start with us, right? Let's start with our role, because I agree with you 100%. We must be the beginning of our healing. We must be the beginning of the healing of the family, not just ours. We start with us, and then we move on to the family. And for those of you, again, the book is Sacred Woman, A Guide to Healing the Feminine Body, Mind. I'm just going to mute you all because there's some background noise. Let me just do that. Yeah, thank you. We again must return to. I'm reading this book now, and it's changing the way I see. I'm just quickly going to talk about this. It's changing the way I see my womb, right? And that is a huge part of us being detached from our womanhood. And I'm going to quickly say something also about Mama Kanyisile talking about women never being sex objects and our role in that aspect. But we have moved away from our times where the ugogo, the elder woman, sat with the younger ones and prepared them for womanhood, understanding exactly what their body was doing, how their body was relating with nature and how it relates in nature generally. And Dr. Wahome, who was with us, myself and Oladile, a few months ago, spoke about this. And hopefully we'll be able to have him put together a program where we can start return to preparing our young women for womanhood. So we have such horrible, in general, women globally, such horrible relations with our wombs. Horrible. Because it's menstruation, it's pain, and we detach ourselves from our wombs. The menstrual cycle is looked at with disgust, even by us. Despite the fact that it is the thing that creates life. Without the menstrual cycle, without that bleeding that we look down upon, we have no life. And what Queen Afua, Mama Afua is saying is we must return to revering our wombs. We must return to being kind to our wombs. We must return to valuing our wombs and treating her kindly. And there's many, she has guidance on many ways that we can do that. And I recommend the book again, Sacred Woman, A Guide to Healing the Feminine Body. If you would like the woman, you cannot, the book and you cannot afford it, reach out to me, kumbukeni1@gmail.com, and we'll see how we can get it to you. But every woman, every child, I said to my daughter yesterday, I'm going to give it to her. And I was reading her a part that I think that she needed to hear yesterday. And I said, I will get the book for her. So all of us as mothers, it is our responsibility as we heal ourselves and return ourselves to who we are to start healing our children. Whether they're yours by birth or not, find that child, that woman child, that girl child around you. If you're a teacher, if you're a community member, whom you can give this book to, because it has a lot of wisdom. And like everything else, you don't have to agree with everything that Queen Afua is saying. Look at the big picture. You do not have to agree with everything a book is saying. Look at the big picture, the message. Those of you who went to school on the continent, and those of you who are lucky to be in schools where reading is upheld and done in a way where you're allowed to critically think, and all perspectives, all ways of seeing the book are allowed in the conversation, not the Western way where you're a black child and you say, oh no, the white people did not relate this way, the teacher shuts you up. No, if you've been blessed to be in spaces where your thoughts, whether they were agreeable, whether they were comfortable, whether they were kind, were allowed to be shared as you read books, you understand that this is important for you to see the big picture of the book and not nitpick on the things that you don't agree with. So that is how I recommend that we read Sacred Woman. There's something that Mama Kanyisile said. Yes, that women were not sex objects back then. I think we have also played a role in over-sexualizing ourselves. Our men have done it too. And because, and here, I believe it starts with a man, the over-sexualizing of the woman. Because we are in a society that is run by men. And it started with music. It started with TV. It started with pictures on magazines, right? That's how it started. At least from my understanding and from my view of history, the man is the one who steps in to over-sexualize the woman. And then we fall prey to that because now we are idolizing the man. And this goes back to religion. If your God is male as a woman, why will you not see the man? Even as much as you stand in feminism, you still see the man as superior to you because your God, who you think is superior, is male. And even worse, white male. So let that sink in for us women and for the men. Am I back? All right. In how we are relating with each other. If we are going to stand in religion and say that our God is male, if we are going to say that our God is male and that he rules everything, how then do we expect consciously, like in our psychology, how do we expect our brains to think of women as equal? How? All right, Oladile.
Yeah, I think based on what you just said there, I've just written the comments. It's when our history got perverted that all the distortion started. Like Mama Kind has said, you know, because I still got my mother. She's 85 years old, and every so often I like to pick her brain and talk to her about how things used to be, because they've got to the stage where they've been, I'll say, their minds have been brainwashed to believe in every Western concept. But every so often I would take her back. I'll say to your mum, when you used to be at a particular age, what was it used to be like? And she would tell me stories of basically when they go to the rivers bathing and when nothing was sexualized, where, you know, they have their breasts hanging out and all that, and men were there, and everybody goes about their business, and everything was fine. So the system basically bastardized everything, because I don't know how to describe them, but whatever they come into play, whatever they touch, it becomes evil. It becomes evil, and they've bastardized it, they've commercialized it, they monetized it, because it's all about making money for them. And unfortunately, because we've adopted their systems, capitalism, whatever it is, we've adopted it, so we've played into it. So they've sexualized everything. Unfortunately, you know, because men I'll say we never used to be this way, but our senses has been just messed up to see women as sexual objects. And then, you know, we had Professor Small on a podcast once, and he was talking about going to a village. I remember, if you remember, Nduku, going to a village and seeing all these women. And when he saw it, he got too excited.
Yes.
But he had to rein himself in.
They were bralette, like they were.
Yeah. And he got too excited and everything. But then he had to rein himself in because they were just innocent women. So, and this is the kind of training that we men need to. It's difficult today because I work with a lot of youngsters, and the way they talk down on women is so bad. Even my daughter, who's 28, and the girls I work with, they say to me, boys of nowadays, they're not what you. They say to me, they're not what you are like at your age. The way they talk to them, the way they talk down them, is just so bad. So as men, I think our role is basically to reach out to the young boys and to get them back grounded. In 2025, it's difficult, but I think we men have a role to play. We have a massive role to play to actually rein things in and get things at least as possible, to some kind of sanity. So yeah, that's basically what I'd like to say on that, because it's things are still gone so bad that it's difficult to rein it in. But I believe there's always something we can do, and I think for me, I don't think it's a lost cause in actually bringing something back, because we can do it.
I agree.
Yeah,
It's never a lost cause as long as we
never,
are.
never. Yeah.
Mama Kanyisile may have to leave us in a few minutes, so I'm going to let her share um wherever she is guided on the subject. Mama Kanyisile, wherever you are guided on the subject, please share with us. Yes, please.
Thank you, Ndugu. I think the very first sharing of Noire, someone posted, I don't know who it was, the miseducation of the Negro. And I hope that that Negro, people understand it as the race and not just as in African Americans who live in the US, because the miseducation is real. Global education is UNESCO run. It is run through the United Nations. Yes, that's why it's the same everywhere. And this thing called the human rights agenda, which has come to say, oh, women are equal to men, or remove corporal punishment because children have rights, and um, for me, it's just what has declared the war even more. I always say for South Africa in 1994, if the ANC had a chance, I mean, they won an outright majority. And if they wanted to Africanize our constitution or anything, they could have. And I always give this example. Imagine if they said, in terms of gender relations or the gender concept, we are returning to self, we are going back to who we were pre colonial. No. Instead, they told us the United Nations Human Rights Agenda say these are the things men and women are equal, na 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 na. And I mean, we are a country with the most gender laws, by the way, I can assure you in South Africa as a woman. Yes, we have very elaborate gender laws that I boast about. You can take anybody to court, even for as simple as sexual harassment. But for me, that's not the end of the story. The way it was introduced, anything that comes through the United Nations route. I mean, the UN took so long to demonize apartheid. We had to lobby and lobby. So you can understand the thinking of the people. Anything that creeps in to change culture but comes through the UN door is looked at as Eurocentric. So it's pretty much like you are telling South African men, we are going to Europeanize you. We are not saying we are returning you to who we were. For that disjuncture for me is real. But Ndugu, I have a Gen Z, and what scares me even more is more and more Gen Zs are telling me in the Gen Z fraternity, people, a Gen Z is anyone that's, I think, is still under 26 years of age now, who was, I think they were born around 2000. Um, they are telling me amongst the Gen Zs, the resurgence to patriarchy is far more than the Gen X before them and the millennials before them and us, the baby boomers. And I'm just like, we need to put a microscope on this, Oladele and Dugu and Nwar and Cindy. We need to study society, sociology is not, and say, what has happened? No, they are telling me the belief among Gen Zs girls is that Victorian girl that sits with crossed legs, long skirt, and you don't shout, you speak in a certain way. You know how they used to take ladies in England to finishing school. I'm told that's a resurgence among Gen Zs. The judgmentalism is high. There's a resurgence and return to religion, to the purity of religion. Not our purity of the woman is pure because of the womb. The purity that says if you're not, we are vile, so nobody would marry you. That type of thing. So I think we need to get Gen Zs on this show, Ndugu, next time that are woke, and we need to interrogate how this has crept to that generation. Because while on one hand we hear young people tell us give the baton to young people, pass it on to young people, which is a good thing. We never discriminated. For us as Africans, as I say, we're synthesizers. But I'm not passing on a baton to someone whose mentality on gender is stuck in the 17th century Victorian era. I
Thank you.
mean, when that's something I fought against all my life? How's that going to happen? So I think for me, those are the thoughts I want to leave you with. But also, Ndugu, to say until we embrace our spirituality, because that's what grounds us, as I say. It teaches you. Cindy touched on it in a way. Noire, my brother, I hope you're learning in African language, because it is the African language that grounds you. When African Americans say to me, lead us, to spirituality, how do we speak at the altar? I'm just like, it is so tough, because you're asking me to teach you that in English. We don't do it in English at the altar. We do it in mother tongue, and these mother tongues are not the same, and these originators are also not the same. We call them differently. That's why I say they're cosmologies in African spirituality. It is not one cosmology. The silhouette, yes, it's the same in that we don't have gender grammar, originators are undisclosed, and then we have deities, which are both genders, both sexes, actually. And then you also have the living dead, who are ancestors who also replicate both genders, both sexes. So, yeah, until we embrace African spirituality, it is this thing that will bring the woman to, when you set out as a man, participate in healing the woman. In African spirituality, it is that spirituality that will bring the woman to the awakening that I'm colonized. Because as you go to that altar and you call Gogo first, then that's the order. You cannot defy it. You call the grandmother first, the woman first, then the man. As you deal with this in our spirituality, as you look at deities for Cindy, who is Zulu, that the biggest deity in Zulu culture is female, Unomkhubulwane, the deity of fertility, the deity of first rains, of first planting, which is why it's in September, which is why they celebrate the Red Dance. So is that amongst the Swati. So when you are in this spirituality and you start internalizing, you start realizing as a woman that I was duped. I'm actually oppressed in this Western way. So you're beginning your reawakening journey. So for me, everything points to us really dumping religion, embracing African spirituality. It is in learning our languages and using them and speaking them and realizing the depth and the richness in those languages, the absence of gender grammar, but also, Cindy, how we call, and then I'll say this and give it back to you. You know, when people call me aunt, I get so mad and they don't want to listen. Like, I am not your aunt, because there is no aunt in the language that I speak, which is Zulu, Xhosa, and Ndebele. In fact, in all South African languages, all 9 of them, there is no aunt. If it is paternal, it is a woman male. That's paternal. Udaba, urachadi. It is a woman male. If it is all the males from your mother's side, they are the female males. It's omalume. So for us, even as you call it, I can tell, oh, that's their paternal, oh, that's their maternal. Even as you call it, I can tell that's the mother's elder sister, that's the father's younger sister, that's the father's younger brother, that's the father's, it is so specific. And it just shows the fleeting gender, how gender was fluid, that it wasn't biology, it wasn't cast in stone. So speaking an African language next to embracing African spirituality, I would say those are the 2 things I leave our viewers with. Learn any African language. It doesn't matter. It's an African language. I haven't met any that has gender grammar. I hope I am not misleading people when I say there isn't, but the ones that I've looked at, and then I've looked at least close to 1,000, and we have over 3,000 in this continent. I have not met gender grammar. So do that, because that grounds you, and then go to the altar in African spirituality. I think I'll leave it here, Cindy, but also just emphasize that for as long as, honestly, and I'm not attacking religion, for as long as the head of the house is the man, for as long as Jesus is ruling in the house, we are not healing these gender relations, people. We are not, because it is actually Jesus that came to split our family. It is not our originators. It is not Umvelinqang, as Cindy, the Zulu people call the originator. It is not Muari for the Shona. So thank you. I'll leave it at this, Nduku. And thank you so much for having me. And thank you to all the panelists who are here. Such a depth of knowledge.
Always good sitting with you.
Thank you so much, Mama, Dr. Kalisile, Mama Kalisile. Thank you.
Yes, always,
Thanks so much.
always see the love coming in, and I'm trying to stop it. Go ahead, Oladile. Have something to say to Mama Kanisile?
Yeah, man, I'm glad that I know my sister, man. And like always say to my sister, it's a spiritual connection. We got a long way to go. We got a lot to do. We got work to do, sis. So let's keep building.
Yeah.
We got
Be
much love,
well.
sis.
Thank you for being with us. We'll be seeing you soon. Be well, Mama.
We'll see you on Thursday, actually.
They do the Sahel Thursdays, so they
Yeah.
update us on what's going on there, their perspective on what's going on there. So again, join them. I'm not able to join them because I have returned to the plantation at that time. So you all please be with them. And this is, I mean, this is what I said for a whole year when I reached out to the community, support me so that I can do this work full time. And the community is like, why should I give her money? Why should we give her money? She needs to work hard and make her own money. Go on, Nora. You have something to say?
Oh, you know, it was killing me for me. Be quiet this long.
Go
Everybody
on.
knows
But
that.
hold on. Before you speak,
You know that.
you need to speak when Mama Kanyisile is here, or you can hold
No,
one
no.
more
While Mama Kanisina is here,
All right,
because
go ahead.
we want to
Go
say
ahead.
thank you so much, and appreciate finally being able to be online and see you and talk to you. And so I'm truly humbled and truly appreciate it. And and I've even wrote down, even in all these notes, language, language, language. My mentor, friends of mine know I'm constantly saying that, you know, jokingly, we white people. I'm a white man. You know what I mean? I can have all this melanin, hair, you know, epigenetics, rhythm, you know, basketball, all the stuff I have. But if cognitively you're speaking not even the proper English, right, a bastardized version of it, and all those African Americans, we have this kind of epigenetic thing of changing the language consistently, which is African, and survival on the plantation. It's language, language, language. And then also, when we're talking about the religions and the cultures, you cannot move outside of what you were saying earlier, and even Cindy was saying language, and Nduku was talking about the man in your mind. And if it's and Islam has done a lot for the Black American community. It's one of the reasons why I don't talk down on it. I do understand the Crusades. I do understand sub-Saharan slavery and also the oppression of indigenous Africans versus Arab Africans. So I'm clear on that. But if there's an Arab man in your mind also, or a white man in your mind as your God or your deity, it's a wrap. Because in all of the writings and all of the people in regards to the foundation of Eurocentric Christianity, we're all heathens and devils. We're never going to be Christian. It's never going to happen. This is in their mantra in the government systems now. This is their thinking. This is their readings and writings from 17th and 18th century. So yeah, we can the Holy Ghost that we're catching in our African spiritual systems that we don't know of, right? We've never been to a Bimbays. We've never been to the continent. We've never, even in America, these systems that exist, been taught to see that the Black church, how much the Black church is integrated into Yoruba culture. But it's so-called, I don't even believe in the concept of demonry, right? But it's what Eurocentric people and witch and all this stuff has put on us, and now we put it on ourselves. Not knowing that we are the ones that they're talking about in regards to their system of Christianity. Now we'll say, oh, we go back to Ethiopian, we go back to original ancient Israel Black Hebrews and stuff like that, which is a good narrative of conversation. But your current oppression comes out of a Eurocentric Christianity, and you are the devil, right? If you're Black, you're indigenous, whatever you are, you're the heathen and the person that you'll never be a Christian. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not getting on people who are following it. You have to connect with who you are, who you think you are in your worldview. So it's no disrespect to what you follow, but if you don't know the context and the history of these people and what their foundational stuff has been in their readings and writings, and they know you're never going to read this. They know you're not going to know nothing about world civilizations, African civilization, spirituality, so they can control you through you not understanding that you're this person that they're talking about that's a demon and the devil and the heathen, a person of color. You've never even known this. So you're not, and you're not going to read and write to find that out, because you got to pay bills. Most people just aren't going to do that. So I didn't mean to get a little amped up, Dr. Kanisile, But it's one of these things that you have the oppressor oppressing you, and you're oppressing yourself, and utilizing a spiritual a system that the powers that be that control it, you are the one that they have to get rid of, socially, psychologically, and spiritually. And it says that, and they've written it. They, so it's a, I gotta let you go. So it's apologies, Dr. Kanisa, but
No.
that's exactly what this is, and there is no optimism or moving into that unless because they're removing books, they're removing documentaries, they're removing everything Black and Western culture right here purposefully, and there's a reason for that, we know. But you can't move forward if this is your psychology. And it's speaking a language, you could because we're just going to tease. If you even speak with a click, right, or anything indigenous, that's something to tease and to laugh at still to this day. I mean, we might make jokes and have fun, but psychologically, it's still something that we won't get to unless you have a Black liberation theology. I won't say Hitler, but a person who is taking control over the people and making sure you learn this language so you can rid yourself of the white man and the white woman that's deep inside of your psychosis. All this, like I said earlier, all the psychologists, sociologists that frame the modern time are these white Europeans basing their thing on phrenology, eugenics, craniology, and all of these things that if you don't understand that, and if you don't read the content, you don't care to, right? You just want to make some money, take care of your kids, become a millionaire, and all that. You're just going to be in the circular framework of nothingness. And so that stratification system that you're talking about, that's framed this whole thing with ethnic groups, right? Johann Blumenbach and these other people. The woman is at the bottom. The Black woman's at the bottom through the stratification system, the hierarchies, the caste systems, and the religions. So it's impossible to break that unless you get some guns and get at people. I hate to put it like that. I don't want to not have this on because I said the word gun, so hopefully that doesn't get. But right. you can't change this. You know what I mean? So apology, but that's
No need for apologies. You keep apologizing, and I'm like, okay, let me let him advise. Stop apologizing. There's no need to apologize for being who you are and for speaking to our community about what they do to heal themselves. There's no need to apologize, please. But there's a question for you, Mama Kanyisile. Before we go,
I really need to go away.
Okay. So send me a message. Look at that question and send me a message, and I'll relay to the audience, please.
Well, I apologize to Mama Kanyisile had to go, and I kept going and stuff. And I knew she had to do.
No, but it was very interesting. I'm glad I said for that segment, Nwari. Thank you so much. And maybe just to add a one-liner that Ethiopians normally tell us, oh no, but Christianity didn't come with white people here. You're still converts. I mean, I can't tell you when, we cannot tell you when African spirituality came to Africa. It is because we are, and we are because it is. But for them, there's a place and time. I think it's in the book of Acts chapter 16, one of their eunuchs converted. So they are still converts. Whether it came with whites or it came with their eunuch, they are still converts. Thank you very much.
And one thing to add for context in regards to that tirade I went on is because of the millions of humans that have been killed behind this.
Yes.
Millions of us, indigenous, that have been murdered and killed because of that psychotic. That's where that tirade came from. Me knowing the blood that's going to continue to shed and has still shed based around all of that.
All right, Mama Kanyisile, now for real, we're going
to agree. Thank you so much. I'll type in the answer.
So before we go to Nwari to speak on the role of a man in our current dysfunction as women, and how the man can play a part, as is indicated in Mama Afua's book, Queen Afua's book, her husband, first of all, notices that there's something wrong with her. And then not only does he notice, because our men nowadays, they notice, but they don't say something. Her husband goes ahead and asks what is wrong, what is bothering her. And is gentle about it, she says, is gentle about it. And therefore, his gentleness allows her to open up and tell what is bothering her. And he sits and listens. He sits and listens until she's done. And when she is done, he appreciates that she has opened up to him. He explains his confusion before and his understanding currently now that she has explained herself. And then he comforts her. He holds her and sings to her a poem. Now, for the men listening, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but this is a woman telling you what a man did that made her open up to him and feel comfortable with him. So you take whatever lesson you're going to take from that, or don't, and be an arrogant man and continue living like the white man does. So in Mama Kanyisile is talking about the UN and the and all these white US aid, UN, all this. How do we, as an oppressed people, the question that comes to mind as she's speaking, how do we as an oppressed people allow the oppressor to dictate our way of being? The oppressor that is determined to destroy us. When did we allow our brains to make it okay for us to use the Western way to move when we know we are not Western? When did we allow the universe to be run by an American way of being, which is the UN and the US aid, when we know our cultures are different from the American culture? So sit with that question. And then this point that Mama Kanyisile made of there not being an aunt in the African culture. And I'm going to extend it to the African culture because it's not just in Zulu, Nkosa, the Nguni nations. It's also in Kiubuntu. And when we spoke to Robin Walker a while back, he confirmed what we had suspected. We had suspected this. I had suspected this, and my community members. We suspected this because we're studying Kiubuntu, otherwise known as Kiswahili, and we are seeing its connection to prove to those of us who are believing this Western lie that Kiubuntu is Arabic, that Kiubuntu is actually an African created language, our own language created by many nations of Africans that wanted to come together and do trade and get along and intermarry and be well with each other. And he confirms our suspicions at the time that Kiubuntu is purest in the Congo. That Kiubuntu is purest in the Congo. So going back to explaining Mama Kanyisile's point on there not being an aunt, in Kiubuntu, the feminine side, your mother's side, is associated with femininity, whether they are male or not. You as a child, your mother's side is associated with femininity. Your mother's big sister is Mama Mkubwa. That's the word. I said I gave the truth that Kiubuntu is purest in Congo to help us understand this, right? We're not using the Arabic words that describe these people. We're using the indigenous ways. Mama Mkubwa, big mother, right? On your mother's side, your mother's small sister is Mama Mdogo. And because of these titles, they understood the roles they played. The males and the females on your mother's side knew they were nurturers. They were going to nurture this child, these children that come of that woman that is theirs. And then on your father's side, they're all masculine. And they take on masculine roles in nurturing, in raising this child. Let me not use the same word that I use there. In raising this child, they take on the masculine roles. Your father's elder brother is Baba Mkubwa, big father. Your father's younger brother is Baba Mdogo. So we have this Western way of saying aunt, uncle, which allows us to detach from these people who are supposed to be our mothers. We're supposed to have multiple mothers, right? We're supposed to have multiple fathers on the father's side. And this is the aspect of community being responsible for raising that child. It is not just the man and woman who bought a house in the Western culture and have a picket fence who are responsible for that child's well-being, that child's discipline, and that child's respect. It is everyone on the mother's side and on the father's side responsibility for that child's well-being and upbringing. So we talk about things and we think we're just talking about language, but we don't understand the depth of how far it is reaching in maintaining our well-being and the health of our family. Noire, the role of a man, of our men.
Yeah. So, and I appreciate everything you said in regards to how all of these things interrelate and interconnect. Um, these roles, and a lot of times, again, as I've again learned through Eurocentric mindset and still having it and working on ridding it, I hope that because again, this is even with the language that we're using, the conversation that we're having, it's a small percentage of people of African descent and Black people who even understand the rhetoric and would even tap in to what we're saying. It's very difficult to get people outside of this rhetoric, language, and conversation to engage in it because of the level of whiteness that's in you. Because there's levels to it, right? So you are supposed to reject everything that we're saying. It wouldn't make sense for you to accept any of this that we're saying, because that Eurocentric colonized mind is pushing all of this stuff. After spirituality, we mean Islam, Jesus, and Christianity. You know, that's who we are. We're the original people. This is what the pushback will be because you don't have a context of, as you speak the language. And these, what I said, the sociologists, these white Europeans from 15th, 16th, 17th century that has framed almost every part of your social being. You have to know that that has happened because you're going to reject and say, I'm Black, I'm African, I'm this, and these people are different and they're not like us. You're just going to keep saying that. And then I'm, you know, what are you talking about? You ain't no professor. You ain't read this book and you haven't read, you know, and so not understanding how psychology and how cognizant these things get into your head for you to be able to begin to know how do you be a father, a male, or be a leader, be a family man, all these things that I've struggled with in the past and continue to learn to be better. And if you don't take on, like, again, it's not to, but you have to, you know, you decolonize like this. You know what I mean? This is how you, the autobiography, you know, Garvey, that's how you decolonize. You know what I mean? Shake hands to D up, you know what I mean? You have to decolonize that way. And in the beginning stage of learning how you relate to the woman, how you relate to how you read that, because it's a tough thing. So the things we have to do is lead by example, but be a good example for yourself and of yourself, which is an ongoing battle in the West, right? The over sexualization of everything, again, the arrogance, the thing you were talking about, very important because it's an egocentric culture, right? The capitalism, the Western capitalism that the white male set as a way of thinking is competitive, right? Just from letter grades in school, everything is a competition. So if you are a woman who's going up the ranks in corporate America or schooling or whatever it is, you're supposed to have battles with the man, right? I don't want that to happen, and I'm not, congratulating that or saying that's a positive thing, but psychologically, you're coming in through a capitalist Western thing. So man to man's going to conflict, woman to woman's going to conflict, relationships are going to conflict because it's competition. And so you're in that. You have to know that that's what you're in. So it takes all of these things to try to fight against it. And this is your being. As air, water, and blood, your being is capitalist competition in a Western thing through the language and through the understanding of who you are, let alone when you get into the Arabic and Western or white Christian religious aspects of that. But if you don't know none of that, you can't even begin to get into the stage because you're so Black people sometimes are the most anti-Black and anti-African people, sometimes more than other ethnic cultures. And so if you're constantly hearing this rhetoric that we're talking and you're triggered to just push back on it, never open the book, never look at the brothers and sisters who are speaking about it, never get to learn who Queen Afua is and Dr. Layla Afrika and Dr. Sebi, who people just discovered after COVID, believe it or not. People have been around since the 80s and 90s, but that's neither here nor there. So to lead, you got to know, in my opinion, that's the first, fight all that off, and then begin to try to get this stage of leadership as a male, as a father, and try to fight all of those so-called issues to even be able to do that. And so now you have a system. I have a film called For Mothers Who Won't Let Fathers See Their Children. It's a documentary film. And it's just all women talking about the importance of fathers. But it's the government systems that I talk about in the documentary that in these Western constructs that women are trained to use to push back, to have power over the male based off of the patriarchal system. And so as a woman, you're going to take on a white male patriarchal psyche to survive and push back against the black man, white man, or whoever else. Even as an African-centered, genetic, epigenetic, spiritual being, in essence, that constantly comes out and that's in us, it's this other Western thing that creates the conflict. So again, I hate to go that far away from the question, but I think again, context and those things, then you begin to start those things. Like how can I deal with the mother, father, all these things, and be able to lead. And that's been a hard journey for me and a hard journey for a lot of men because of how you're colonized and trained and you don't even know it. So again, I just think we have to relearn what our problems is, the constant mistakes that I made personally or people are making personally, and then move forward to lead in regards to and have balance in regards to understanding the mistakes we're making, and then being able to say, hey, talking directly to the woman a certain way, like you just said, in regards to hearing something and then singing or using poetry or just speaking back to the woman a certain way. Same way with the children, right, or the adolescents, and as they're learning through dysfunctional hip hop and the degrading social media is becoming the norm overtly and deep in the psyche. That's really at the current stage of destroying the relationships, families, and this imitation of the woman trying to imitate the dysfunctional black man and white man, or us or whatever, trying to imitate that, and then thinking that that's power or feminism through, and it's singing about, this is power as you do oral while on menstruation. And this is a hip hop song. So I hate to be that graphic, but this is the type of stuff that's out there that we don't know. As a teacher who taught in high school and in college currently, that the adolescents and the youth are listening to and are celebrating. And as you say, the lyrics, this is the type of thing that's deep-seated. So you're in an uphill thing if 90% of educated sisters are signing up for divorce. And some of that more recently is non-infidelity, right? Because men have, like, we take accountability and responsibility. We have been, just leading in that, in this infidelity thing in regards to the social structure and the sexualization. And many of us have been guilty of that. We can't say that we haven't been. So when you having those type of conversations and trying to reassess that, and then I'll end here. Apologies to Cindy and Lotterly and you and Duku. I'll end here. You have a very immature Western social society. 15-year-old, 25-year-old, 30-year-old, and you have 50, 60, 70-year-olds because of social media and what's going on in the society, imitating 15-year-old and 25-year-old kind of behavior socially. And I don't know how you begin to remove that unless you shoot down the satellites.
Oh, me shooting down the satellites. I am all for taking down the oppressors' satellites. 100%. We need to figure out what code we need to put together, what strategy we need to put together to take them down, because how can we allow our oppressor to be above the clouds, above the skies, observing us all, everything we do, and telling us how to move? I just sit with these questions sometimes, people. I hope these questions help trigger your critical thinking. Help, even if it's by yourself in the house and you won't come out and admit it. I hope it starts. It triggers you asking yourself, why the hell am I allowing oppressors to put up satellites? And why am I not joining other Ubuntu to figure out how to take them down? I'm glad you brought up the over sexualization again, because I was going to say something that I forgot to before Cindy goes and tells us her view on the role of the man. And then quickly we'll go around and talk about the child, both the male and the female child, in the well-being of the woman, and therefore the well-being of the family. And we'll do that quickly, my brothers and sisters, because it is 1:58. We've been on for almost 2 hours. So we women are now taking on, the man started, but we women are now taking on the role of our over-sexualization, right? Yes, I will let you go in a minute. You know what? Actually, brothers Noire and Oladile, remind me to speak on this sexualization thing as far as the woman's role in it.
But
Cindy.
it's imitating us, you know, and
Yes.
that's
But quickly, because our sister Cindy has to leave. So let's let Cindy speak, share about the man, and then share anything else that you have to share. And yes, please. Thank you for being with us, Cindy. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think the role of the man is actually for the man to identify themselves as a man, away from the perception or the perspective of colonization, because they too need to realize their own authentic identity in order for them to offer the rightful support to us as women. And for me, I'm using the word support deliberately because women are in powerful positions, and women do realize their power. I think we all are aware that there are women in ranks, and they are taking up these powerful positions, which I don't think are influenced by men. And I will give a few examples. For example, we've got Major General Fatuma Hamid in Kenya, who has also taken up a leadership position of being commander of the Air Force in 2024. And that's power on its own. We have Dr. Kanyisile Lishville Shabalala, who just left, who was the first female admiral in South Africa. So I think women do have the power, and men can offer the support in the roles that these women are taking up. And I think it's unfair, it would be unfair for us to place a huge responsibility on men as to what they need to do in shaping women, because women also need to also find their true and authentic self in order for them to develop into their purpose as women, and in order for them to be able to take up their responsibility in society. So if we place full responsibility on anyone, and we hold anyone accountable on the purpose of any other individual, we then place that person at risk of being judged by the society, of being labeled by the society, because if the woman does not turn out to be whatever the man has described or prescribed them to be, then it would mean that the man has failed. So I think really the role of men is to support women, and to allow them to be in their full power so that they can take up their responsibilities in society, and for them to reach their full potential as women in our society. And I think that goes for the family dynamics as well. In our African community, we had Inkosazana Mkabayi Kajama, who was a princess. Again, she led the Kulusu military kraal, and she was also a regent of the Zulu monarch. So I think we really need to allow men to have a decision of saying that they want to offer the support, or they don't want to be held accountable for the outcome of any particular woman. So really they need to find their own identity. We need to allow them to have their own identity as men, so that they can also just decide as to what role they want to play in the lives of women. And I think, yeah, that's it for
Did you
me
wanna,
on my side.
did you want to share anything as far as the children as well?
Yes. Well, the children, again, the children are mostly influenced by the mother, again, the woman, because they're given birth, and for me, I don't have a child yet, but I do understand that when women have given birth, they are given the opportunity to hold their children, which then allows them to have a deeper connection, a spiritual connection that I spoke about when I was describing the neuroscience or the scientific part. That spiritual connection goes a long way, because through that connection, they are able to pass on whatever energy, positive energy, that will be able to lead that particular child in future. So the women play a huge role. The men also play or have a responsibility in raising the child in order to sustain the family and to promote sustainability in family dynamics. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there and allow for the conversation to continue without me. Thank you so much to Prof and Brother Oladile and Sister Nduku. I really had an insightful conversation with all of you.
Asante, asante, Cindy. Be well. See you soon.
Thanks, Cindy. We'll see you soon.
See you soon.
All right, double.
So, Cindy said we need to allow, at least she believes we need to allow the men to decide if they will participate in the healing of the woman or not. As she was speaking, my what will I call it? Instinctive response, the one where before my mind catches me and tells me maybe you need to think otherwise, was hell no. We are forcing them to behave this way. That was my immediate response. But then when reasoning came to me, and the will, the hunger for healing in our community came to my mind and to myself, my being, I found myself saying, okay, yes, Cindy has a point there. And this point is seen in African proverbs, where elders gave you a proverb and they told you, so there's for example in Kiubuntu, mtaka cha mvunguni sharti ainame. The person who wants what is underneath the bed, they must bend over and reach for it and get it, right? Where you're being told to get the thing under the bed, you need to bend over and get it. Now you decide if you're going to do it. That's what the elders did. They gave you the solution and then they left you to decide whether you would do it or not. So mtaka cha mvunguni sharti ainame. Asiyesikia la mkuu huvunjika guu. The person who doesn't listen to the elders will end up breaking their leg because they'll fall in a hole or something, because you didn't listen to the elders about what is ahead of you. So you were told what must be done in order for things to be a certain way, what risks are ahead if that is not done, and then you chose what to do as a part of the community, with the understanding that your actions had to be centered in the well-being of the community. So men, we are telling you what needs to be done to heal the woman. We're telling you what needs to be done to heal the family. Now you decide whether you're going to do it or not, understanding what the consequences are if you don't and what they are if you do. Is there anything else I wanted to say before we continue to the children? No, yes. So yes, the over-sexualization and our role in it as women. The man started it. The man, especially the white man, actually, let's lay the blame where it needs to be laid, and not for the sake of laying blame, but understanding the white male started the over-sexualization of the African woman. The white male started the over-sexualization of the Mona Ubuntu woman. Professor Smalls, as Oladile said, visited the continent and said he saw this community where the women were naked, the tops, their breasts were open. And our people lived like that for years without sexual abuse being a common thing, without disrespect of women being a common thing, because the men understood they needed to respect. The men were raised by everyone in the community to respect the woman, whether she was bare or not, because they didn't over-sexualize her. And it comes in with whiteness. It comes in with the Arabs. This over-sexualization of the Black woman, of the Mona Ubuntu, and then by extension, the over-sexualization of women. But believe you me, it's that, you know what, actually, Professor Noire is here, he can tell us, because I believe it did happen with the Europeans, this demonization, over-sexualization of the women. But now we have stepped into this role of the man of over-sexualizing us. However we got here, we are here now. We're doing videos where we're twerking because we think it's cool. We're doing videos where half our ass is out and the boobs are half out because we think it's cool. I'm all for feminism. I'm all for being proud of your body. And yes, wear your low cut as low as it can be. But if you have an understanding that the men in society are thinking of you a certain way when you do that, which is not upholding your femininity, it's not upholding your well-being, it's not seeing you as an honorable woman, I am against it. So if we understand that these actions are bringing harm to our community, I'm against it. Put your pants on, women. Put your dress on. Cover up that ass. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see your boobs. You don't have to show boobs to be valued. You don't have to show boobs and ass to be seen as a beautiful woman. So we are now responsible for that over-sexualization of our women. And if you want to sit here and argue with me and tell me, Nduku, you need to give grace and all that nonsense, then at least stop and think, what effect does this behavior have in society? Girls are being raped. Girls are introducing, I'm going to be straightforward, penises into their wombs that are not valuing the purity of their wombs. And therefore, they are bringing that toxicity into their wombs and into their being. So you're going to decide as women if you want a society that is upholding well-being of everyone and therefore cover up a little bit and don't expose your sexual parts that men are over-sexualizing, so that at least we can start moving to the point where they're not over-sexualizing, and then now we can put your breasts out if you want, once the men return to our way of being. But for now, we need to cover up so that we can start the healing. Let's talk about the children, Oladile.
Like Cindy said, children is basically, they look to their elders, their mothers and fathers. So, for me, it's as fathers and mothers, it's our responsibility to show the way, be the example, because there's no point in us looking at them to do. We basically need to do what we expect them to do. So they look at us, most especially as you said, as a woman. Obviously, they spend more time with their mothers, so we need to be the example. And as a father, we need to be the example, because the kids, they look at what you do, and they copy you. So I will not put any responsibility on the kids, because it's just down to we parents. As a father, as a grandfather, I need to be the example. I set the example. When I look at my kids now, the way they relate to me now, and the discipline I put in my kids as they've grown up now, I could see if I failed, if I've done the right thing, I can say it in my kids today, and that's a reflection of me. So as a father, and as my wife has done, as we've done it together. So yeah, I think it's just down to the parents. It's just down to us. So yeah, I will not put pressure on kids, because like I said, I work with a lot of youth at work today, and what I see is a failure of the father and the mother in the homes. It's massively down to that, because I can see it. And I become, sometimes at work, I become a counselor. I become the surrogate dad at work. And some of them cannot speak to the parents because the parents are damaged, and they have damaged kids as well. And they come to work broken. So sometimes, even though as an employer at work, I will sit down with these kids and I counsel them. Sometimes they have nobody to speak to. So they will come to me, because I became that kind of father figure that I can open up to. And these are the kind of damages that I come across in my daily life, in my work, every day with the kids that I work with. And this, so in terms of moving forward, I think we parents need to be responsible. We need to be accountable. Basically, that's the key word, that we need to be accountable. We need to be responsible. And if you're going to have kids, if you're not ready to carry the burden, and don't forget, society today is so bastardized, so damaged. Bringing kids into this society today is hard work. It's, because everything is just steeped into the social media and the indoctrination and the media manipulation that we follow today. So as a parent, if you're not ready for that responsibility and to grab hold of do the right thing, please just be careful. That's all I'll say to that. Just be careful. So for me personally, like I said, I will never put responsibility on kids, obviously, because kids are a mirror image of their parents.
Asante Oladile. Nuare. You muted.
Yeah, to build on what you're saying, it's very important. If this is a shameless plug, then it'd have to be a shameless plug, right? But here, I don't know if you can see it. Trying to
Hold it closer to the center without moving.
Moving.
Can't see it.
There.
See, right?
Okay.
So this here is an all women's narrative, right? And the title of the film is For Mothers Who Won't Let Fathers See Their Children. So you now have a new dynamic in Western society with courts playing a major role, right? As soon as you're born here in the States, you have a social security number, pretty much a ward of the state, right? But now you have a different type of control over parenting and fatherhood and even motherhood, if you will. And now you have institutions and bureaucracies that play a major role in how the child is developed. And so you can even be a great father, so like myself and many others that are dealing with this, where you can be as hands-on as you want through the power of racist bureaucracies and institutions, making sure that fathers either, if not removed from the home so that the woman can gain resources. There's a psychology that even plays into if someone has children, they in their mind they have an opt-out, meaning that they could not allow the father to see their kids, and then you have to go through court systems and fight and fight and fight and fight. 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, however long it takes to try to get some type of visitation. So this little nugget or segment that I'm also throwing in also plays a role in the development of the child. Court systems, school systems that are geared around a prison. School is called, as we heard this before, a school to prison pipeline. Now social media has played a major role in parenting and having more say-so psychologically and socially in children's minds. So you have to have such a pushback and war-like mentality to maintain a household and to be a father to your own children and a father figure in the community, in the school systems, etc., in regards to how this dysfunctional cultural system has developed. So understanding myself firsthand of how you could see yourself as a good father and push and do things and take care of your kids and family. And then the emotional elements that played a role in relationships. In the courts, playing on that, government systems, Western courts, playing on that, are able to now make sure that there's a separation and segregation within the family. If you're uneducated enough to know how not to go to that system first and foremost to begin with, unless it's some extreme, where it's extreme violence, of verbal violence, or extreme physical violence and sexual violence. Outside of that, these systems are used to, disband families and stuff. And truth be told, at the forefront is women who see this as, even if they want to get out of a relationship, let's say it's a non-toxic relationship, and then they like another guy, and they feel like, hey, we could use these court systems to kind of get out of this, outside of infidelity, because we know, and I think I won't say we know, but infidelity coming from the male or the man has been the number one at the forefront of segregating and separating families. But now we're in a new movement where it's not just no longer infidelity. It's just, if I feel like I just want to live a different life, now I could just move out of it and use the courts as leverage to create dysfunction within the family. So now you're at a lose-lose almost, that now makes it difficult for some to maintain households and maintain families with this kind of court thing in the back and in the social psychologies of people's minds as a bailout to use. So again, this affects the children. That's the bottom line. And no one cares. The mother, father kind of could care less in most situations. It's just about, who can get who back, or who could get who first, and this type of thing that plays out. And not really caring how it falls on the children. And of course, understand this because they make a lot of money off of it. Millions of dollars off of this socialized imbalance in society, and then specifically in Western Black households, because in many indigenous African households, the family still has a say-so, still has a lot to say in the dynamics in that, and has a lot of weight. Whereas more individualized, rugged individualism, socialized Western cultures, you're kind of on your own, and you kind of, it's the courts and these things have more say, and creates the dysfunction, and it affects the children the most. So yeah, Sarah Barton, Hot Top Venus, just to jump back, is one of the first people who was over-sexualized in front of the world in regards to her phenotype and her body shape, a classic phenotype and body shape of indigenous African and Black women. That's why the reason our men love our sisters so much, in regards to not just body type. We would hope it's the mind first too, right? But with all of that being said, she's one of the first that Europeans, the Eurocentric paradigm, put in front of the world, and the world began when they honored African and Black men a certain way, and in the ancient writings of the Greeks and Romans in regards to who indigenous Africans were, in our skin tone, our build, our muscular build, and in the body shapes of the women. Once modernity comes, 15th, 16th century, 17th century, and this over-sexualization of indigenous women, and more specifically African women, now plays a role through the world. And then as Christianity takes hold, the woman is the reason for the evil in the world, or in society. And when you have that rooted in your mindset, deep seated, whether you know it's there or not, it creates all of this that we're dealing with. The only way out, and I'll leave it here, and this is my personal view, the only way out is to, and it sounds like sensationalism, it sounds like idealism, and all of these things. African language, African spirituality, removing Eurocentric thought process and mind, and how do you engage with friends, family, people, and it's probably one of the most difficult things to do with a white European tongue, mind. I'm talking about myself and people. This is why this is a conflict, me personally, and as I see it. And I don't know how you get back to that. I know that's the core to save us and to help us. But how do you get to that when you, as an African, indigenous African, and Black are diametrically opposed to the religions, the cultures, the languages, even the dress? Because you'll see people in the Caribbean and African Americans sometimes wearing a lot of what's called Afrocentric and African garb, and may not see continental Africans wearing that and wondering why people in the diaspora are even wearing this, and why is this thing with the clothes, and why do you want to know our culture, and why, you know? And I'm saying this from having conversations with continental Africans from the continent. So again, this colonization, this anti-Blackness, anti-Africanness, and I'm sorry, I need to close on one last thing. I'm sorry. We're not African. In America, we're not African. We're indigenous to America. We're not African. And so with that mindset, the only way that you could say that, and this is, I'll end it here, the only way you could say that, there has to be 20 to 50 anthropologists and archaeologists. There has to be maybe $5 to $10 million, maybe $20 million put in research. This has to be maybe 10, 15, 20 years of Blacks, archaeologists, anthropologists, social scientists researching this to now say that we are rooted in America and we didn't come from Africa. Until you prove that in a book or a documentary with that amount of research, money, and funding, then it's not a conversation. Pictures and emotions and your anti-Africanness can't change the reality of being connected to this land. So until that happens, I'll believe you when I read the book, see the documentary, and look at the cross references and the research and the empirical data that proves it. So I hate to take it into a different conversation. We're supposed to be dealing with family and men, but
it's all related. It's all related, right? You started by saying you're giving a shameless plug, and I wanted to mention that I don't mention these things like when I pull out something to mention it is because it is playing a part in the healing. First of all, in the dysfunction of our community, but also now that we understand how it's playing a part in the dysfunction, it plays a part in the healing when we do something about it. So we need to stop associating shame with speaking of the things we are doing to contribute to the community. Your film, you sharing it is in contribution to the well-being of our community. You are putting out a film that is observing and getting women to speak about something that is happening to our community that is breaking us up. So anytime you get an opportunity to speak on that and let the people know that that film is out there, do it and stop associating shame with it. Yeah, we it's again, it's the intention behind your mind. Are you sharing this thing because you're looking to make millions? Is that your main focus? Or do you actually want to help your community? And if it is that you want to help your community, make some money while doing so, because this is a capitalist system and we need our community to be financially liberated. Yes, but your main focus in making that film was you observed a dysfunction in the community, and therefore you made it so that we can be all aware of it and do something about it. Regarding what Oladele said, I agree and disagree that we children are not to blame. 100%, yes. We, the parents, are responsible for raising our children. Our elders are responsible for raising our children. And we did drop that ball. But it has come to a point where even if a child, like Noire said, even if a child has great parents who are, Oladele, I'm going to mute you real quick. Thank you. Who are participating, who are giving the child everything, who are disciplining the child, because of what's out there, the child sometimes chooses to move away from that centered respect and role as a child in an African community. So there's what's happening outside of us, right? In general, we have heard from all the speakers who joined us today that there are outside forces that are determined to create dysfunction in our family. We're now aware of that. We need to continue teaching our children and generations that are coming that there are outside forces. This is what happened in our community. Once upon a time, we were a healthy community. These forces came into our community. They brought dysfunction. Because we allowed it, this happened to our community. We can never allow that to happen again. That has to be continuous. This conversation cannot just happen on Kumbukeni.
Definitely agree.
This conversation has to be continuous. Even within our communities, it has to be a regular conversation. How are we doing? Right? We have to check. How are we doing? How are we doing as far as going back to who we are? How are we doing once we get there? What enemies do we have? Always aware. What enemies do we have? How do we keep them away? So it's a huge conversation. It cannot be done in one broadcast, but it is us contributing to the conversation that had already started. There are many who've come before us who started this conversation and continuing it, and hoping that a lot of you will take up the baton and continue. Regarding Mama Kanyisile, the question for Mama Kanyisile, this was the question. Mama Kanyisile, could you explain the change in context if SA, South Africa, were changed to Azania? Also, Azania doesn't seem to be an African term. Why was Azania chosen? Should not a Bantu term be used? I mean, Africa is not an African term. How about that? But here goes Mama Kanyisile's answer.
I was going to say, Africa's not even an African term.
Right. Here goes Mama Kanyisile. For those of you who do linguistics, there are very many telltales that can tell you that a term is not African. And it's in linguistics. So Mama Kanyisile's response, sorry, that is the question. Going back to, it's coming in two parts. It came with Black consciousness, the Black conscious movement, not even Pan-Africans, the PAC. They used Africa. Azania is a historical name for various regions of Africa, particularly East Africa, and has been used by some, oh goodness. Where is it breaking up? By some Black political, has been used by some Black, there we go, Black political activists as another name for South Africa, representing a land of Black people. Here's a more detailed etymology. The name Azania may have come from Arabic with the meaning of the land of plenty. And I'm not surprised by that, especially when Mama Kanyisile says it starts in the East African region. This is where the Arabs come to colonize and to get Africans to put in the enslavement, in the trade of enslaved Africans. So I'm not surprised by that. And I think for those of you who follow Brother Robin Walker, he may have the answers to these questions. So look Brother Walker up. Look for the Kumbukeni episode with Brother Walker. He shares his platform where he's educating us on our story throughout time.
But also, obviously, you know, our Kebalan, Ethiop, and Kemet, you know, there's, but even though we're talking about land of Blacks and in certain regions, some have put that in context for the full continent. And there's multiple names that I've seen and heard throughout time that were before the idea, the concept of the region termed, I believe, out of, was it Leo Africanus? Or,
I was gonna say, Nware, it's interesting because even Al, Kebulan, Al is Arabic. That term Al before anything is Arabic. So again, linguistics will reveal what is ours. And like Brother Robin Walker said, our culture is most pure in the Congo. Our general cultures, because we did migration. We came from a certain central part and migrated elsewhere. But where you will find African cultures and Kubuntu, otherwise known as Kiswahili, purest is in the Congo. So,
because then you'll go into, for Arab, is it Hyksos and Hittites and Amorites, and then you start.
And we should have a session where you come, Professor, and we'll call you Professor Nwari, where you speak to us about these beginnings. But quickly going through the other questions, and then we're going to close, because we can be here all day, and we've been here now for 2 hours 15 minutes and 12 seconds, and I need to release my brother. To the panel, Wanajapo, could you explain the difference meaning quickly brothers, quickly please brothers, could you explain the difference of meaning concept of feminism from the Afrocentric Ubuntu slant and the Mzungu slant, particularly from angle of women relating to the men? Quickly, I'm going to say the European way of feminism is a masculine woman. And you know what? You don't need me to tell you. The symbol that they use, the image that they use, is a woman with a tied, with a like holding her hand like that. That is feminism. Interpret it the way you want, but that is the European way. The African way is a woman who is still feminine, but can take on certain roles that are seen as masculine, including the warrior. Warriorship was not just left to men, it was left to women as well. And I'll quickly read this. I had this before, so that to answer this question, and then my brothers can contribute if they want. This is also in Queen Afua's book, The Union of Two Becoming One. Man is not the head of the house, nor is the woman the head of the house. It is the one with the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding in a particular manner that guides or leads the union to the shores of Ma'at. That is African spirituality, womanhood, not feminism. Oladile.
I cannot add to that. That's perfect. That's for me. That's what you just said is perfect. It just sums it up nicely. So there's no more. There's no point actually. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Noire.
Yeah.
Does the term feminism even exist in our indigenous languages and cultures?
It doesn't exist. So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyism is not African.
Thank you for keeping it short and to the point. That is a great answer right there. All right, the last question, Duku. It is for me, but my brothers, I welcome you to help me answer this one. Could you explain the difference? Oh, well, this one is for me. The difference in your African thinking some time ago versus now. Can you discuss some examples? I cannot discuss because we don't have time, but I can tell. The biggest one right now, I would say, is the understanding of economics, capitalism. I was one who saw a good shoe and bought it. I was one who saw a good shoe and bought it, whether I needed it or not. I had, like when I was moving from my place, I had bags of shoes. Some of them I hadn't even worn for such a long time. Now I am one who is very much okay with being somewhere in the rural area with a great house that is protected from the elements, some electricity, a good internet connection, a land to grow my own food. I will be growing that food in the soil, and I'll be fine. I'll be happy and have a few clothes made by the tailor next door. And we made the fabric from the cotton that we're growing or whatever else. That's who I am now. So that's the biggest change, how I see economics. Capitalism is an evil that must be eradicated, because the center, the essence of capitalism is exploitation of other human beings. The other change is how I see whiteness. And I want to say, this is not to say that white people are evil. This is not to say that we should discriminate against white people. But how I see whiteness is a huge change in who I am today. I was one who thought we are all one people. Let's come together, sing along, pick up the daisies and dance in the meadow, and sound of music. That was me. White people are just as human as I am, until I started doing the reading and I started seeing how white people treat us, experiencing how white people treat us. And then I started engaging with the community, the Wana Ubuntu African Black community in the United States, and learning about what has been done to them. And then I started reading both writings written by Black people and white people about themselves, because white people tell us about themselves. White people who want to disassociate from this false notion of white supremacy tell us about their community. So once I started learning that, I started seeing whiteness in a different way and how it is used to oppress us in a different way. Those are the two main changes. Maboma, do you brothers want to join this?
I could speak on two quick things.
Yes.
Buying a shoe in regards to capitalism is one thing. Kemet and those pyramids and the gold and what them pharaohs was wearing is a different type of mindset that we have to understand in regards to what capitalism is, exploitation, versus our indigenous way of showing who we are in history in the world. Because you got to have some kind of ego to build them pyramids and that stuff they've been building throughout the continent to represent who we are as people. Now, exploitation is a different thing. Did they exploit cultures and people? That's a different type of, that'll take us away. As far as me in regards to Africanness, I know I was a white man when I started getting into African liberation theology, or just reading what I little bit know about African spiritual systems and cultures and language, linguistics, and all of that, and then becoming a social science professor, and then seeing the origins of how we think with individualism and capitalism and corporate, meritocracy, all these things that formulate who we are in this Western world. And then I realized when I put the two together, I said, God damn it, I'm a white man. Damn. I couldn't, and when I came to that, it was like, again, yeah, I got the rhythm, I've done things, dance, movement, basketball, epigenetics, and my original origins is Igbo. Father's side is Bisa, Burkina Faso. Mother's side is Igbo, Nigeria. All of this. Yeah, I'm African, epigenetics, spirit, things I dream, all this stuff. Yeah, I'm very indigenous African, but that social psychology, go around the world, and then how I see I'm moving and all these different things is very capitalist and very Eurocentric and Western. And no black person would say they're white, and no proud one. But there's a reality once you get that context, and then once you understand the spiritual systems and the African cosmology. Now, I'm not saying I'm a pro at it. I know it all. I'm just saying once I got the little bit of that, I said, damn, I'm white.
Dr. Carr, I believe it is Dr. Carr who calls it black people with white souls. So black men, black women with white souls is what.
Franz Fanon's book as well.
Thank you. Brother Oladile, quickly.
Yeah, my one, I'll say when I came away from religion. Funny enough, when I came, that's basically when the scale came off my eyes. Funny enough, about my son was 18 years. My son is 33 years old now. When he was about 17, 18, he was telling me about African consciousness. And me and my wife were saying, what do you know? This was when my son that's when he was about 17, 18. He's 33 now. But
you said he was saying?
My son was telling me of African consciousness. He was telling dad, look into that. And we would forbid him off, thinking, what do you know? But it was persistent. And I believe from that age, like I said, he's 15 years, that's 15 years ago now. But it sort of seeded into my mind. And I started looking. But what really got me is probably about 8, 9 years ago when I came away from religion. And the moment I came away from religion is basically when what my son was saying and everything else just fell into place. And then from then on, there was no stopping me, man. I just went full throttle, reading, going for everything I could lay my hands on. And I realized, you know what? They've lied to me for so long, and I got angry.
Well, I'm tripping and bugging because my mother and my father put that in me first. Before all this stuff, they was banging on westernization and banging on white supremacy when I was born. And so my mother was making my father dashikis and crowns when I was in the womb. So I came out with that rhetoric around me. So I don't know, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that first. And then, growing up, here, born in 1970, and then what was going on at Howard at the black colleges, Black Liberation Movement, Mary Baraka, Sonia Sanchez, the last poet, all that stuff is where my parents was coming right into Dr. Ben lectures and Mary Baraka lectures. And so I was around it. So I would say that first. But then later, personally, was my readings and stuff.
And I think what we can take away as we close from both what Noire and Oladile said, and what Mama Kanyisile said, and what Dada Cindy said, is that we are all responsible. Because you see, in Oladile's case, it is the son who did it, the child who triggers in the parents' awareness. For Noire, it was the parents. And if Noire's parents decided, okay, we're gonna leave it to the child, Noire would never learn that, right? If Oladile's son decided, I'm gonna leave it to my parents, Oladile and his wife would not be awakened. So we all have to take responsibility for the well-being. We don't even need to be told. If we see our family is having dysfunction, we all step in and we do what we need to do using the skills that we have to contribute to the well-being of our family. I thank you all. Again, this topic cannot be done in 2 hours and 25 minutes and 57 seconds as we count. I encourage you all to continue this conversation in the different spaces that you are in, not just to talk, but start implementing those lessons that you're learning from the conversation. I encourage you all to grab Sacred Woman, a guide to healing the feminine body, mind, and spirit by Queen Afua. There's lessons that she's teaching, including rituals that we can start doing as women to bring back our wellness. If you cannot afford the book, if you cannot access the book, reach out to me. I will help you find the book. Again, kumbukeni1@gmail.com. Asanteni, siku njema, have a good day, have a restful day. For our brothers and sisters who are still in Islam, I am not saying this as
You're naughty.
I'm not saying this as a holding up of Islam. I'm not. I'm saying this in love of my brothers and sisters who practice it, but are still my brothers and sisters. May you have a peaceful Eid. May you have wellness. May you be centered in our well-being. And may whatever lessons that are taught in that religion that lead to the dysfunction of our community and to you hating your fellow brothers and sisters who are one Ubuntu, may you not be grounded by that. May you learn to sieve and take what's good from that religion and give up what is bad from it that is causing the dysfunction in our family.
Underco, I'll go as far as saying, you know what, guys, we need to decolonize ourselves away from Islam and Christianity. Let's get back to proper Africanness. I'll leave it there.
Asante. Siku njema, kwaherini. Be well,
everyone. Speak to you guys soon.
Peace and blessings, everybody.
Thank you.